The massive alien ships appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning, casting shadows across entire continents. Captain Vexithol stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet through the viewing screen. His crystalline body reflected the light from Earth's sun as he prepared to deliver the same message he had given to countless worlds before. In the United Nations building in New York, President Jae-min sat at the large conference table surrounded by world leaders. The air felt heavy with fear and uncertainty. Through the tall windows they could see the enormous alien vessels hovering motionlessly in the sky like dark clouds that would never move. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer, her voice barely above a whisper. The large screen at the front of the room flickered to life, revealing the towering figure of Captain Vexthul. His multiple eyes gleamed like jewels, and when he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber with an otherworldly resonance that made the humans feel small and insignificant. "I am Captain Vexthul of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien began, his words precise and cold. "We have monitored your species and deemed you ready for integration into our civilization." Defense Minister Su Jin shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Around the table, other leaders exchanged worried glances, but nobody dared to speak. "The terms are simple and non-negotiable," Vexthul continued. "You will surrender your military forces immediately. 40% of your planet's resources will be transferred to hegemony control. Your population will be regulated according to our standards. Your governments will dissolve and you will accept hegemony administrators to rule in your place." Secretary General Min Ho felt his heart pounding in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had seen the recordings from other worlds that had faced this same ultimatum. Most had surrendered immediately. Those that had resisted were now nothing but scorched rocks floating in space. "In return," the alien captain said, his tone suggesting he was offering a great gift, "you will receive our protection and the benefits of our advanced technology. You will join 12 other species in service to the greater good of the galaxy." "President," Jae-min finally found his voice. "And if we refuse?" Vexthul's laugh was like breaking glass. "No species has ever refused the hegemony in 3,000 years of expansion. But if you choose to be the first, your cities will burn from orbit. Your oceans will boil. Your world will become a warning to others who might consider defiance." The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic from the streets below. Through the windows, they could see people going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire future was being decided in this single moment. "We have seen your military capabilities," Vexthul said with obvious amusement. "Your weapons are primitive. Your ships barely leave your own solar system. You have no shields, no energy weapons, no defense against orbital bombardment. Resistance would be not just futile but brief." Economics Minister Young-soo studied the data streaming across his tablet, calculating the impossible numbers. 40% of Earth's resources would mean the end of their civilization as they knew it. Billions would starve. Their technological advancement would halt completely. "You have 72 hours to consider our offer," Vexthul announced. "Use this time wisely. Contact your military leaders, consult your scientists, run your calculations. You will discover what every other species has learned, that cooperation with the hegemony is the only path to survival." Foreign Minister Yoon-ji leaned forward slightly. "What guarantees do we have that you will honor these terms? That you won't simply take everything once we surrender?" "Your question reveals your primitive thinking," Vexthul replied. "The hegemony does not break agreements. We are efficient administrators, not destroyers. Destroyed worlds produce nothing. Living worlds that follow our guidance prosper within their designated roles." President Jae-min stood slowly, feeling the weight of every human life on his shoulders. Around the table he could see fear in every face, but also something else. A stubborn pride that had carried humanity through countless disasters and conflicts throughout their history. "Captain Vexthul," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands, "I speak for all of humanity when I say that we appreciate your offer, but we must respectfully decline." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the alien captain seemed stunned. his multiple eyes blinking in what might have been surprise or disbelief. Decline, Vexthul repeated, as if the word was foreign to him. Humanity chooses freedom, Secretary General Minho added, standing beside his president. We choose to determine our own destiny, whatever the cost. Vexthul's expression shifted from surprise to something resembling pity. Then you choose extinction. In 72 hours, when your cities are ash and your oceans steam, remember that this destruction was your choice, not ours. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the human leaders staring at an empty screen and wondering if they had just signed their species' death warrant. Exactly 71 hours and 58 minutes after the ultimatum, something impossible happened across Earth. In Seoul, the lights of the city center flickered once and went dark. In New York, the endless hum of traffic suddenly stopped. In London, the Thames continued to flow, but no boats moved upon its waters. Captain Vexthul stood on his bridge, watching his tactical displays with growing confusion. The readings made no sense. One by one, every major city on the planet was simply going quiet. Not destroyed, not damaged, just silent. Sir, his scanning officer reported, his voice uncertain. I'm detecting massive power shutdowns across the entire planet. Are they surrendering? Vexthul asked. Shutting down their defenses before we attack? I don't think so, sir. The power grids aren't being destroyed. They're being turned off in perfect sequence, like someone is following a careful plan. On the planet below, Dr. Hyunwoo sat in his laboratory at Seoul National University, staring at equations that had kept him awake for 3 straight days. His coffee had grown cold hours ago, but he didn't notice. The numbers on his screen seemed to dance and shift, showing possibilities that shouldn't exist. His assistant, Jin-A, burst through the door. Professor, did you see the news? The government is telling everyone to stay calm, but people are panicking. Some are saying we should have surrendered. Dr. Hyunwoo looked up from his work, his eyes bright with discovery. Jin-A, what if I told you that surrender was never really an option? What if there was a third choice that nobody considered? Before she could answer, both of them simply weren't there anymore. Vexthul ordered his ships to move closer to Earth, their massive hulls blocking out the sun over major population centers. Landing parties prepared to investigate the strange silence. The readings from their scanners showed something that had never happened in 3,000 years of hegemony expansion. Captain, the tactical officer said slowly, I'm reading 0. Life signs from Seoul. Impossible. That city had 10 million inhabitants yesterday. Sir, I'm also reading 0 life signs from New York, London, Tokyo, and every other major population center we've scanned. Vexthul felt something cold move through his crystalline body. Equipment malfunction. Run full diagnostics on all sensors. The diagnostics came back perfect. Every piece of scanning equipment was working exactly as designed. But according to their instruments, Earth now contained no human life whatsoever. The first landing party touched down in Times Square in New York. The streets were empty, but not in the way of the evacuated city. Traffic lights still blinked red and yellow. Steam still rose from manholes. A hot dog cart sat abandoned on the corner, with fresh food still warm on the grill. This is Landing Team Alpha, the team leader radioed back to the ship. The city appears completely deserted, but there are signs of very recent activity. It's like everyone just vanished in the middle of whatever they were doing. In a coffee shop on the corner, mugs sat half empty on tables. Newspapers were spread open to articles about the alien ultimatum, with coffee rings staining the pages. A child's drawing lay on one table, showing stick figures of humans and aliens holding hands under a smiling sun. The landing team moved through the streets like ghosts in a museum. Every building was intact, every system was functioning. But not a single human could be found anywhere. Landing Team Beta reported similar findings from London. Sir, we found a hospital where the medical equipment is still running. There are patient records showing people who were here just hours ago. But the beds are empty. Even the patients who were too sick to move are simply gone. In Seoul, landing. Team Gamma discovered Dr. Hyunwoo's laboratory. His computer was still running, displaying complex equations that hurt to look at. The coffee mug beside his keyboard was still warm. His pen lay on a notebook where he had been writing calculations. The ink still wet. What were they working on? The team leader wondered aloud, studying the strange symbols and numbers. His science officer studied the equations with growing unease. Sir, these calculations deal with dimensional physics, theoretical work about moving between different layers of reality. Theoretical? Well, it was theoretical yesterday. Vexthal received reports from landing teams across the globe. Every major city told the same impossible story. Humans had simply vanished, not gradually or in groups, but all at once, as if they had stepped out of existence itself. Find them, Vexthal ordered, his voice tight with frustration. 8 billion beings don't just disappear. Deploy every scanner we have. Search every building, every cave, every possible hiding place. The search continued for days. Deep underground bunkers were found empty. Submarines floated unmanned in the depths of the oceans. Even the International Space Station orbited Earth with no crew aboard, its systems running automatically, but its human occupants vanished like everything else. In the abandoned United Nations building, President Jamin's chair still sat at the conference table. A half-finished cup of tea grew cold beside notes he had been taking during their final discussion. The last line he had written was barely visible. Sometimes the only way to win is to change the rules of the game entirely. But President Jamin, like every other human on Earth, had simply ceased to exist in any way the hegemony could detect or understand. Admiral Tazmek commanded the largest search operation in hegemony history. 50 fleets spread across nearby star systems, their advanced scanners probing every asteroid, every moon, every possible hiding place where 8 billion humans might have gone. The mystery of Earth's empty cities had become an obsession for the Hegemony Council. Deploy monitoring stations around every habitable planet within 50 light-years, the Admiral ordered from his command ship. If the humans used some kind of transportation technology we don't understand, they had to go somewhere. But 3 weeks into the search, the results were always the same. Nothing. No trace of human ships, no energy signatures, no signs of massive population movement anywhere in the surrounding space. On the planet Kethmore, Governor Yuldan reviewed the daily reports with growing frustration. The search was costing enormous amounts of resources. Hundreds of ships, thousands of personnel, advanced equipment worth more than some planets, all dedicated to finding a species that seemed to have simply vanished from existence. Sir, his communications officer announced, we're receiving a strange report from monitoring station Gamma 7. What kind of strange? They say their equipment is malfunctioning, but our diagnostics show everything working perfectly. Their sensors keep detecting movement where nothing should be there. Governor, Yuldan frowned. Send a repair team. The repair ship Darkwing arrived at monitoring station Gamma 7 12 hours later. But something was wrong. The station's lights were still on. All systems showed green on their status boards, but nobody answered their communications. This is Repair Team Leader Kexthor. The team captain radioed back to the planet. We're boarding the station now. Everything looks normal from the outside. Inside the station, they found the same eerie emptiness that had plagued Earth. Coffee was still warm in mugs. Computer screens displayed normal readings. But the 12-person crew was simply gone, leaving no trace of struggle or evacuation. Sir, one of the repair technicians called out, look at this sensor log. The computer records showed strange readings from just before the crew disappeared. Mass readings that appeared and vanished. Heat signatures that moved through solid walls. Energy patterns that followed no known physics. It's like something was here, the technician whispered, but something that exists differently than we do. Similar reports began filtering in from across the search area. Scout ship Thunderstrike, investigating a distant asteroid field, simply stopped responding to radio calls. When rescue teams arrived, they found the ship intact and undamaged, but its crew of 30 had vanished, just like the monitoring station personnel. Captain Morthek commanded a patrol squadron near the edge of hegemony space. His ships had been searching empty systems for weeks, growing more frustrated with each negative report. Then his science officer detected something unusual. Captain, I'm picking up strange readings from the cargo convoy passing through Sector 15. What kind of readings? Energy fluctuations that don't match any known technology. They seem to be watching the convoy. Captain Morthek ordered his squadron to intercept, but when they arrived, they found 3 cargo ships drifting in space. The ships were undamaged, their cargo holds still full, but their crews had disappeared. The only clue was a series of sensor readings that made no scientific sense. Sir, his tactical officer reported nervously, I keep getting the feeling that we're being observed. By what? Our scanners show empty space. I know, sir, but something is out there. Back on the hegemony homeworld, Science Minister Velthar studied the growing collection of impossible reports. Crews vanishing without trace, equipment failures that left no evidence, sensor readings that suggested the presence of something that couldn't be detected by their most advanced technology. What are your conclusions? Asked High Council Leader Mordek. I believe we're dealing with something unprecedented. Velthar replied carefully, a form of existence that operates outside our understanding of physics. You're suggesting the humans developed some kind of advanced technology? I'm suggesting they became something that technology cannot detect or affect. The hunt for humanity was beginning to cost the hegemony more than just resources. Reports of missing personnel were increasing. Entire research stations went silent. Supply convoys arrived at their destinations with skeleton crews who insisted their missing teammates had been aboard when they departed. Commander Jinwoo Park had been a military strategist before the vanishing. If he still existed somewhere, in the spaces between reality, he would have been proud of how effectively humanity's disappearance was disrupting their enemies. Every ship the hegemony sent to search for humans was a ship not conquering other worlds. Every soldier hunting for vanished humans was a soldier not oppressing other species. On a dozen hegemony worlds, subject species watched the news reports with growing hope. For the first time in 3,000 years, the mighty hegemony seemed confused, even frightened. Ships that had seemed invincible were disappearing. Personnel who had seemed untouchable were vanishing. Maybe, whispered a young alien on the conquered world of Dextara, the humans found a way to fight back that nobody expected. Admiral Tasmek stared at his tactical displays, watching red markers disappear one by one as more assets went missing. The hunt for humanity was becoming something else entirely. A war against an enemy that couldn't be seen, couldn't be tracked, and couldn't be fought with conventional weapons. Sir? His aide asked quietly. Should we continue the search? The Admiral looked out at the stars, wondering if somewhere in the darkness between them, 8 billion humans were watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal what they had become. Admiral Kethmore had conquered 17 different species during his long military career. He understood battle tactics, enemy psychology, and the art of breaking an opponent's will to fight. But this was unlike anything he had ever experienced. This was fighting shadows that struck without warning and disappeared without trace. His flagship Dominion's Edge shuddered as another critical system failed for no apparent reason. The lights flickered, then returned to normal. Life support systems registered brief malfunctions before correcting themselves. It was always the same pattern. Catastrophic failures that somehow left no evidence of sabotage or attack. Sir, his engineering officer reported with barely controlled fear, that's the 15th system failure this week. Our diagnostics can't find any cause. It's like the ship is breaking itself. Admiral Kethmore studied the reports on his screen. Similar incidents were happening across the entire fleet. Ships would lose navigation, weapons, or communication systems for brief periods. The failures were never permanent, never quite enough to destroy the vessels, but always enough to remind everyone aboard that something was wrong. Run another security sweep of the entire ship, he ordered. The security teams moved through every corridor, every storage bay, every maintenance tunnel. Their scanners detected nothing unusual. But crew members kept reporting strange sightings, glimpses of human faces in reflective surfaces, shadows that moved independently of their sources, the sound of footsteps in empty corridors. Lieutenant, Dexmar was checking the cargo bay when he saw it clearly for the first time. a human figure standing near the supply containers looking directly at him. The man appeared solid and real, wearing what looked like a simple Earth military uniform. For a moment, their eyes met. "Intruder in Cargo Bay 7, Dexmar shouted into his communicator. When the security team arrived 30 seconds later, the bay was empty. But the temperature readings showed a warm spot exactly where the human had been standing. The air recycling system detected traces of Earth-normal atmosphere that shouldn't have existed on the ship. "I'm telling you, he was there," Dexmar insisted. "As real as you or me." Similar reports came from across the hegemony fleet, crew members encountering humans in impossible places, inside sealed compartments, on the outside of ships in open space in areas that sensors showed were completely empty. The humans never spoke, never threatened, but their presence was unmistakable. On the planet Vorthek, military commander Yaxtel received increasingly disturbing reports from bases across 3 sectors. Critical supply convoys were vanishing between star systems. Military installations suffered mysterious power failures that disabled their defenses for hours at a time. Weapons depots reported missing equipment with no signs of forced entry. "Sir," his intelligence officer said nervously, "the pattern is becoming clear. Every facility that has been affected was involved in the original search for the humans." "Are you suggesting they're targeting us specifically?" "I'm suggesting they know exactly who we are and what we've been doing." The evidence was overwhelming. Hegemony forces that had participated in hunting for humanity were experiencing problems. Those that had remained focused on other duties were largely unaffected. It was as if the vanished humans were keeping a careful list of everyone who had tried to find them. Captain Velmore commanded a research station orbiting a dead planet in the outer rim. His facility had been analyzing the strange energy readings from Earth, trying to understand how an entire species could simply disappear. 3 days ago, his lead scientist Dr. Kexathera had made a breakthrough. "Captain," she had reported excitedly, "I think I understand what happened to the humans. The energy pattern suggests they didn't leave our dimension. They learned to exist between dimensions." That night, Dr. Kexathera disappeared from her locked laboratory. Her research notes were found scattered across her desk with new equations, written in what appeared to be human handwriting. The final line, written in perfect hegemony script, simply read, "We are not gone, we are everywhere." The psychological impact on hegemony forces was becoming severe. Soldiers reported feeling constantly watched. Pilots refused to fly alone, claiming they could see human faces reflected in their cockpit windows. Even high-ranking officers admitted to sensing an invisible presence during important meetings. Admiral Kethmore called an emergency conference with his senior staff. As they gathered in the secure briefing room, the lights dimmed slightly, though. The power systems showed no problems. "We need to face the truth," he told his officers. "We're not hunting hiding humans. We're being hunted by them." Commander Yoltek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "But sir, how do you fight an enemy you can't see or touch?" "That's exactly the problem," the admiral replied. "Every military strategy we know assumes the enemy exists in the same reality. We do. But if the humans have somehow transcended physical existence..." He didn't finish the sentence. Around the table, his officers understood the implications. Their weapons were useless against beings who could move through solid matter. Their sensors couldn't detect enemies who existed between dimensions. Their tactics were meaningless against opponents who could be anywhere and everywhere simultaneously. As if responding to their thoughts, the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. For just a moment, everyone felt the unmistakable sensation of being observed by intelligent, patient eyes. Then the feeling passed, leaving them all wondering if humanity was listening to their every word, learning their every weakness, preparing for something beyond their imagination. The Ghost War had begun, and the hegemony was losing to an enemy they couldn't even prove existed. President Jae-min Kim materialized in the center of Captain Vexthol's command bridge, like morning mist becoming solid. One moment the bridge was empty except for the alien crew. The next moment a human man in a simple dark suit stood calmly among them, his hands clasped behind his back. Every weapon on the bridge powered up instantly. Security alarms blared throughout. the ship. But President Kim simply raised one peaceful hand and somehow every alarm fell silent. "Please," he said in a voice that carried strange authority. "We need to talk." Captain Vexthul's crystalline body reflected the bridge lights as he stared in disbelief. "Impossible. Our sensors detected no transport beam, no energy signature, no breach in our shields. How did you board my ship?" "You demanded our submission," President Kim replied, ignoring the question. "Instead, you gave us something far more valuable. You gave us evolution." The human leader gestured with one hand, and the air around him began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. For a brief moment, Captain Vexthul glimpsed something that made his multiple eyes widen in terror. Thousands of human figures stood in the spaces between spaces, existing in dimensions that overlapped reality, but remained invisible to normal perception. "We learned to step sideways from your reality," President Kim explained calmly. "To move through the dark matter networks that connect all things in the universe. Your threat didn't break our spirit. It transformed us into something you could never conquer or even understand." Defense Minister Su Jin appeared beside him, her form solidifying from empty air. Then Secretary General Min Ho stepped out of what looked like a fold in space itself. One by one, other human leaders materialized on the bridge until a dozen figures stood among the terrified alien crew. "What do you want from us?" Captain Vexthul asked, his voice no longer carrying its former arrogance. "Your complete withdrawal from human space," President Kim answered. "The immediate end of your conquest-based civilization. Every species you have subjugated over the past 3,000 years will be offered the same choice we were given. Submit to your rule, or evolve beyond your ability to control them." Science Minister Young-Soo stepped forward, holding what appeared to be a normal tablet computer. "We have spent the past months studying your technology, your society, your weaknesses. We know the location of every hegemony world, every military base, every supply route. We understand your psychology better than you understand it yourselves." "Impossible," Captain Vexthul whispered. "You've been missing for months. How could you have learned so much?" "Missing?" Defense Minister Su Jin smiled sadly. "We were never missing. We were everywhere. In your ships, on your planets, in your most secure facilities. We watched, we learned, we prepared." The alien captain looked at his tactical displays, finally understanding the true scope of what had been happening. The mysterious system failures, the vanishing crews, the equipment malfunctions. It had all been humanity studying the hegemony from the inside, learning to dismantle their empire piece by piece. "We could have destroyed you at any time, President," Kim continued. "Your ships, your worlds, your entire civilization. We learned to exist in the spaces between atoms, in the gaps between thoughts. We could have made your entire species simply forget that it ever existed." Foreign Minister Yoonji materialized near the navigation console, her hand resting gently on the controls. "But destruction is your way, not ours. We prefer to offer you the same choice you offered us." "And what choice is that?" Captain Vexthul asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Evolve or become irrelevant," Secretary General Min Ho replied. "Abandon your empire of conquest and subjugation. Allow the species you have enslaved to choose their own destinies. Transform your civilization from one based on domination to one based on cooperation." "And if we refuse?" President Kim's expression remained gentle, but something shifted in the air around him. The bridge crew felt a sudden chill as they glimpsed the true extent of humanity's transformation. They saw fleets of hegemony ships drifting empty through space, their crews simply gone. They saw entire worlds where the population had forgotten that the hegemony had ever existed. They saw the possibility of their own species fading from reality like a half-remembered dream. "Then you will discover what it means to be erased from existence itself," President Kim said softly. "Not destroyed, not conquered, simply removed from the story of the universe as if you had never been part of it at all." The silence stretched for long moments. Captain Vexthul looked around his bridge, seeing his crew's faces reflecting the same terrible understanding. They were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey of something beyond their comprehension. How long do we have to decide? The captain asked finally. You have already decided. Defense Minister Sujin observed. Your fleet is already withdrawing from human space. Your empire is already beginning to crumble as subjugated worlds realize that the mighty hegemony can be made to disappear by a species you thought was primitive. President Kim nodded toward the view screen, where space seemed empty but somehow felt full of watching eyes. The galaxy demanded our submission. Instead, we became its guardians, ensuring that no civilization will ever again force another to choose between slavery and extinction. The human leaders began to fade like morning fog, but their final words echoed through the bridge. Choose wisely, Captain. Evolution waits for no one.